Welcome back to Timeless Sleepy Chronicles. Tonight, we are traveling almost 700 years into the past to a Europe that has not yet heard the words Black Death. The world is quieter than we often imagine. Stone villages rest beneath gray skies, narrow roads wind through damp forests, and church bells mark the passing of each peaceful day. Take a slow breath. Settle into a comfortable position and allow yourself to wander through this forgotten landscape. It is the year 1346. A light rain has been falling since early morning. Tiny drops gather on wooden rooftops before slipping quietly into the muddy streets below. Thin streams of water flow beside cottages built from timber and stone. Smoke rises gently from warm fireplaces, carrying the familiar scent of burning oak into the cool air. The villagers have known rain like this for generations. To them, it is not unusual. Rain feeds the fields, fills the rivers, and keeps the forests alive. Every season follows a rhythm that seems as dependable as the sunrise itself. Farmers begin their mornings before the first light touches the horizon. They walk slowly across damp fields with simple tools resting on their shoulders. Horses pull wooden plows through soft earth, while birds search quietly for worms along the edges of fresh furrows. Children gather firewood beneath tall oak trees, laughing softly as gentle rain taps against their woolen hoods. Nearby, mothers bake coarse bread, while large iron pots simmer over open flames. The comforting smell of warm soup drifts through tiny windows into the cool afternoon air. Far away, hidden among rolling hills, a small monastery stands in peaceful silence. Inside its stone walls, monks carefully copy ancient books by candlelight. Every letter is written slowly, one careful stroke after another. Outside, rain touches the monastery garden, where herbs grow neatly beside worn stone paths. The only sounds are falling water, distant birds, and the quiet turning of parchment pages. Life moves slowly here. News from distant kingdoms may take weeks, even months, to arrive. Many people never travel farther than the nearest market town. Their world is small, familiar, and comforting. Merchants occasionally appear with wagons filled with cloth, spices, salt, and stories from lands beyond the mountains. Travelers speak of magnificent cities, enormous castles, and busy ports beside warm southern seas. Most villagers listen with quiet curiosity before returning to their ordinary lives. As evening approaches, thick clouds gather once again. Rain begins to fall a little harder. Candles flicker behind tiny windows, while families gather around wooden tables to share simple meals. Some whisper prayers of gratitude. Others tell old legends of forests, saints, wandering pilgrims, and forgotten kings whose names have almost disappeared from memory. Beyond the villages, the forests remain dark and peaceful. Ancient trees sway gently in the cool wind. Streams overflow after another day of rain, carrying fallen leaves toward distant rivers that eventually reach the sea. No one walking these quiet roads can imagine how quickly their familiar world will change. Across distant waters, beyond the horizon that none of these villagers will ever see, merchant ships continue their long journeys between continents. Their sails rise and fall with the restless waves, carrying silk, spices, precious goods, and something else, something no one aboard fully understands. But tonight, Europe still sleeps peacefully beneath the gentle rain. And for just a little while longer, tomorrow seems certain to arrive exactly like today. Morning arrives slowly over the Mediterranean Sea. The horizon is wrapped in pale gray clouds, and the gentle rhythm of the waves rocks dozens of merchant ships as they move patiently toward the ports of southern Europe. For centuries, these waters have connected distant worlds. Silk from the east, spices from faraway markets, fine glass, colorful fabrics, books, and precious metals all travel across these familiar sea routes. Every voyage carries stories from places most Europeans will never see. The sailors know these waters well. They understand the changing winds, the hidden reefs, and the quiet language of the stars above them. Long before sunrise, they raise heavy sails while seabirds circle overhead, calling into the cool morning air. Light rain begins to fall. Tiny drops collect along thick ropes and polished wooden rails. The deck becomes smooth beneath worn leather boots as the ship continues its steady journey westward. Days pass gently at sea. The endless horizon rarely changes. Some sailors mend torn sails, while others polish lanterns or repair wooden barrels stored beneath the deck. A quiet cook prepares simple meals of bread, dried fish, onions, and warm broth. At sunset, many gather together, sharing stories beneath softly glowing lanterns, while rain taps gently against stretched canvas above. Far across the sea lies the great trading city of Constantinople. Beyond it stretch roads that disappear into lands filled with deserts, mountains, and ancient kingdoms. Merchants travel these routes for months at a time, exchanging not only valuable goods, but also news, traditions, languages, and ideas. Everything moves slowly. Nothing feels unusual. In the bustling ports along the Black Sea, ships arrive almost every day. Their cargo is inspected, counted, and carefully unloaded before new goods are loaded for another long voyage. Dock workers call to one another through the mist. Wooden cranes creak softly as heavy crates swing through the damp air. Rainwater gathers between weathered stones lining the harbor. No one notices anything strange. Not yet. Some travelers quietly mention that a few distant towns have become unusually silent. Others speak of unexpected illnesses that seem to appear without warning before disappearing again into rumor. Most people pay little attention. Travelers often exaggerate. Merchants have always returned with unusual stories from distant lands. By evening, another gentle rain settles over the harbor. Inside crowded taverns, sailors warm themselves beside glowing fireplaces. They laugh, exchange maps, compare journeys, and discuss tomorrow's weather. Outside, dozens of ships remain anchored peacefully beneath the darkening sky. Lanterns sway gently above the calm water. Their reflections shimmer across the quiet harbor like scattered stars. Among these ordinary vessels are ships carrying cargo that appears no different from any other. Barrels of grain, bundles of cloth, wooden chests, rolled carpets, crates filled with spices whose rich aromas drift through the cool night air. Everything seems perfectly ordinary, yet history often changes in the quietest moments, not with loud announcements or great celebrations, but with an unnoticed arrival beneath gray skies. As midnight approaches, rain continues to fall across the sleeping harbor. Church bells echo faintly through the mist. The ships rest silently beside the stone docks, waiting for sunrise. No one watching them tonight could possibly know that these peaceful vessels would soon become part of one of history's greatest turning points. For now, they remain only merchant ships, drifting gently beneath the rain, waiting for morning. The first light of morning spreads gently across the island of Sicily. A soft mist hangs above the harbor as fishing boats drift quietly on calm water. The air carries the familiar scent of salt, wet wood, and fresh bread baking somewhere beyond the stone streets. For the people of the port, this morning seems no different from countless mornings before it. Merchants unlock wooden market stalls. Fishermen prepare their nets. Church bells echo softly across the rooftops. Children chase one another through narrow streets, still damp from the night's gentle rain. Everything feels peaceful. Far out at sea, dark shapes slowly appear through the morning mist. Several merchant ships. Their tall masts rise above the gray horizon as they glide steadily toward the harbor. No one is surprised. Ships arrive here almost every week. They bring valuable goods from distant lands, and with them come travelers carrying stories from places that seem almost impossible to imagine. Dock workers gather along the stone pier. Ropes are prepared. Wooden carts wait patiently nearby. The harbor slowly becomes busy with quiet conversation and the sound of waves touching old stone walls. A cool breeze carries another light rain across the waterfront. Tiny drops dance across the surface of the sea, turning the harbor into thousands of tiny circles that disappear almost as quickly as they appear. The ships move closer. Something feels different. Not frightening, only unusual. The decks appear strangely quiet. Normally, sailors wave to those waiting on shore. Voices call across the water. Orders are shouted as heavy ropes are made ready. Today, almost nothing can be heard. The sails flutter gently in the wind. The lanterns hanging beneath the wooden beams sway quietly. But the familiar sounds of busy crews seem strangely absent. As the first ship reaches the dock, curious workers exchange quiet glances. The captain steps ashore slowly. His face looks tired after a very long journey. Several sailors follow behind him, moving carefully after weeks at sea. No one knows exactly what they have experienced. Their voyage has crossed thousands of miles of open water, stopping at distant ports where unfamiliar languages filled the marketplaces, and where travelers exchanged countless stories beneath crowded rooftops. Some of those stories spoke of unusual sickness in places far beyond the horizon. Most people dismissed them. Rumors often travel faster than ships. Throughout history, distant lands have always seemed mysterious. News changes with every storyteller. No one expects those distant whispers to reach their own quiet town. Rain continues to fall. Market stalls slowly open as fresh vegetables, bread, olives, and cloth are arranged neatly for the day's customers. Life continues exactly as it always has. Nearby, monks welcome travelers into a small stone chapel where warm soup and dry blankets are offered to anyone arriving after a long journey. Candles flicker gently beneath painted windows. Soft prayers fill the cool morning air. Outside, the harbor grows busier. More ships arrive. More cargo is unloaded. More merchants greet familiar faces they have known for many years. The ordinary rhythm of trade continues without interruption. And yet, without anyone realizing it, history has quietly crossed the sea. No trumpet announces its arrival. No king sends a warning. No bell rings to tell the people that their world is about to change. The rain washes the streets. The sea remains calm. The city settles peacefully into another ordinary evening. Families gather around warm fires. Children fall asleep beneath wool blankets. Travelers rest after their long voyage. Above them, gentle rain taps softly against wooden rooftops. Everything feels calm. Everything feels familiar. And perhaps that is why this moment would later be remembered so clearly. Because the greatest changes in history rarely arrive with noise. Sometimes, they arrive as quietly as rain upon a harbor. And on this peaceful night in Sicily, no one yet understands that tomorrow will begin a story the world will remember for centuries. Several weeks pass quietly. The gentle rains continue to visit the villages of southern Europe, leaving rooftops glistening beneath soft morning light. Streams overflow their banks, carrying fallen leaves beneath ancient stone bridges that have stood for generations. Life follows its familiar rhythm. In Sicily, merchants continue to welcome ships from distant shores. Farmers harvest what they can from damp fields, grateful that the rain has kept the earth rich and fertile. Bakers rise before sunrise, filling narrow streets with the comforting scent of warm bread. Nothing appears different, or at least, nothing different enough to disturb everyday life. Travelers continue their long journeys north. Some ride horses along muddy roads lined with chestnut trees. Others walk beside slow-moving wagons loaded with cloth, grain, and barrels of wine. Each traveler carries stories. Most are forgotten before the next sunset. But every now and then, someone quietly mentions a town where many homes now remain closed. A monastery where fewer voices are heard during evening prayers. A marketplace that feels strangely empty compared to only a few months before. People listen politely, then they return to their own conversations. Europe has survived wars, It has survived floods. It has survived harsh winters and failed harvests. Few believe that distant rumors could change their peaceful villages. Far to the north, rain falls over the forests of France. Tiny droplets gather upon the branches of old oak trees before falling gently on moss-covered paths below. A lone traveler walks beneath a heavy wool cloak, stopping only when the church bells announce the evening hour. He finds shelter inside a small roadside inn. The fireplace crackles softly. Wooden cups are filled with warm cider. Outside, rain continues through the night. In England, the weather is much the same. Mist rolls across quiet hills where sheep graze peacefully behind low stone walls. Children splash through puddles on their way home, laughing beneath gray skies that seem to stretch forever. No one imagines these simple moments will soon become precious memories. Across Germany, monasteries continue copying ancient books by candlelight. Every page is written carefully, every letter shaped with patience. The monks believe they are preserving knowledge for future generations. They cannot know that those generations will one day look back upon this very year as the beginning of one of history's greatest turning points. Meanwhile, the roads remain busy. Merchants still travel. Pilgrims continue their long walks towards sacred churches. Messengers carry letters sealed with wax from one kingdom to another. Life never seems to stop moving. Even the forests seem unchanged.
Rain taps gently upon endless leaves. Owls watch silently from high branches. Small streams wind peacefully between ancient stones, polished smooth by centuries of flowing water. Nature appears calm, almost untouched, and perhaps that is the greatest illusion of all, because history often changes long before ordinary people recognize it. The first signs are easy to overlook. A quieter village, a delayed caravan, a familiar traveler who never arrives, a market that closes a little earlier than usual. Each moment seems too small to matter, until someone finally notices they have all begun to happen together. As autumn slowly approaches, evenings grow cooler. Families gather closer to their fireplaces. Stories become longer. Candles burn later into the night. Outside, gentle rain continues its quiet conversation with the rooftops. No one watching those falling drops could know that Europe stands at the edge of a new chapter, a chapter that will reshape kingdoms, change the lives of millions, and leave behind stories that will still be whispered nearly 700 years later. But tonight, the rain is soft, the forests are peaceful, the bells still ring across sleepy villages, and tomorrow still feels wonderfully ordinary. Autumn settles gently across Europe. The mornings become cooler. Thin mist drifts across quiet rivers before sunrise, and the leaves covering the forests slowly turn from deep green to soft shades of gold and amber. Another light rain begins to fall. It is the kind of rain that seems to last all day without ever becoming heavy. Tiny drops gather on monastery windows, run slowly down weathered stone walls, and disappear into the earth below. Life continues. At least, that is how it appears. In the markets of northern Italy, merchants still arrange baskets of apples, onions, and fresh bread before the first customers arrive. Blacksmiths begin their work before dawn, the steady rhythm of hammer against iron echoing softly through narrow streets. Children still chase one another through village squares. Old men still gather beneath wooden shelters, quietly discussing the weather, the harvest, and the coming winter. Everything feels familiar. Yet something small has begun to change. Travelers arrive less often than before. A merchant expected last month has still not appeared. Another caravan has taken a different road. Letters that usually arrive every few weeks seem strangely delayed. No one panics. There are countless explanations. Perhaps the roads have become muddy after so much rain. Perhaps a bridge collapsed. Perhaps strong winds delayed the ships. Life continues. Across France, a monk carefully writes the date inside a large manuscript. Outside his narrow window, rain falls gently upon the monastery garden.
The herbs continue to grow. The bells ring exactly as they always have. Evening prayers begin at the same hour. Nothing seems unusual. Yet when visiting travelers stop for the night, their conversations grow quieter. Instead of telling exciting stories about distant kingdoms, many simply sit beside the fire in thoughtful silence. When asked how their journey has been, they often answer with only a few words. It was peaceful. It was unusually quiet. The roads felt empty. No one thinks much of these replies. Silence is not uncommon on long journeys. Far to the west, fishermen notice fewer trading vessels along the coastline. Large ports that once welcomed ships almost every day now experience long stretches of calm water. Harbor workers wait patiently beside empty docks. The sea itself remains beautiful. Gray clouds drift overhead. Rain touches the surface in countless tiny circles. Seagulls glide silently across the wind. Everything feels calm, almost too calm. In England, candles begin glowing earlier each evening as daylight grows shorter. Families gather inside warm cottages while rain taps softly against wooden roofs. Grandparents tell stories of kings, saints, and forgotten heroes.
Young children listen quietly beneath thick wool blankets. Outside, the wind gently moves through ancient trees. Somewhere deep within those forests, deer walk silently across wet leaves. Foxes disappear into the undergrowth. Owls wait patiently beneath rain-soaked branches. Nature follows its timeless rhythm. The people of Europe believe tomorrow will be much the same as today. But history rarely announces itself. It whispers. A delayed traveler. An unusually quiet harbor. An empty road. A market missing familiar faces. One small change means very little. But many small changes, together, can quietly reshape the world. Tonight, no one understands the meaning of those scattered signs. The rain continues to fall. Church bells echo across sleeping villages. Candles slowly burn lower beside quiet windows. And somewhere beyond the dark horizon, history continues its slow, silent journey toward Europe.
Winter arrives quietly. The rain becomes colder. Morning frost settles upon wooden fences, while thin sheets of ice begin to appear along the edges of quiet streams. Smoke rises from hundreds of chimneys across Europe, disappearing into skies the color of soft gray stone. Inside warm cottages, families carry on with their ordinary lives. Fresh bread is baked before sunrise. Wood is stacked neatly beside fireplaces. Wool blankets are carefully repaired for the long winter ahead. Outside, the roads are quieter than they were only a few months ago. Not empty, just quieter. Travelers still arrive, but fewer than before. The small inns that once welcomed strangers every evening now wait patiently beside lonely roads. Their lanterns glow warmly through the mist, hoping to guide late visitors toward shelter. Sometimes no one arrives at all. Innkeepers tell themselves that winter always slows the roads. Perhaps next week will be busier. Perhaps spring will bring everyone back. Across the Kingdom of France, monks continue recording daily events inside large handwritten chronicles. Most entries remain ordinary. Rain, cold weather, poor harvests, the arrival of a merchant, the departure of a pilgrim. Simple moments that seem too ordinary to matter. Yet hidden among these quiet pages, another kind of sentence begins to appear. A village unusually silent. A road less traveled. A ship delayed. No one reading those words believes they belong to the same story. Not yet. Far away, along the Mediterranean coast, captains gather inside candlelit taverns after sunset. Maps lie open across heavy wooden tables. Sea routes are discussed in low voices. Some ports, they say, no longer seem as busy as before. Others mention crews choosing different destinations. No one can explain why. Outside, steady rain falls upon the harbor. The anchored ships rise and fall gently with the tide, their lanterns reflecting like golden stars upon the dark water. Everything appears peaceful, and yet, a strange uncertainty hangs quietly in the air. In England, village blacksmiths notice fewer wagons arriving for repairs. Horse traders speak of longer journeys. Messengers complain that news travels more slowly than before. Still, life goes on. Children laugh. Church bells ring. Markets open every morning. The rhythm of ordinary life refuses to change. Nature, too, remains beautifully indifferent. Rain feeds the forests. Rivers continue their endless journey toward the sea. Birds gather along frozen fields before beginning their long migrations. The world itself seems perfectly balanced. Only the people have begun to notice something they cannot describe. It is not fear. Not yet. It is simply a feeling. A quiet sense that something far beyond the horizon is slowly moving closer.
Too far away to hear clearly, but impossible to ignore forever. As another evening settles across Europe, candles are lit behind thousands of small windows. Families gather for supper. Old stories are shared beside warm fires. Outside, rain whispers gently against rooftops that have sheltered generations before them. Few realize they are living through the final peaceful winter before history changes forever. Tomorrow, the roads will still exist. The forests will still stand. The rivers will still flow. But somewhere beyond those quiet horizons, a journey has already begun. And before long, it will reach every corner of Europe.
Spring returns to Europe. The long winter slowly fades beneath warmer skies, and fresh green leaves begin to appear along the branches of ancient oak trees. Rain still visits often. Gentle showers drift across the countryside, before giving way to quiet afternoons filled with birdsong and the soft fragrance of damp earth. The villages awaken once again. Farmers return to their fields with renewed hope. Children laugh beside overflowing streams. Market squares become busy as merchants display baskets of fruit, cloth, candles, and freshly baked bread. For a brief moment, it feels as though the uneasy winter has passed. Yet beneath this peaceful beginning, quiet questions continue to grow. In the port cities, a few familiar faces are missing. A merchant who usually arrives every spring has not returned. A captain known for his reliable voyages has sent no message. An innkeeper waits each evening for travelers who never appear. Still, no one imagines that these scattered absences are connected. Each village believes its own worries are unique. Across the countryside, messengers continue riding between towns. Their horses splash through rain-soaked roads, while leather satchels carry letters sealed with wax. Some letters contain ordinary news. Others carry small requests. A shipment delayed. A meeting postponed. A family asking whether relatives have arrived safely. These are simple questions, but more and more often, the answers never come. Inside monasteries, scribes quietly notice that visitors ask different questions than before. Have you heard anything from the south? Are the ports still open? Has anyone traveled through that village recently? No one has complete answers. Only fragments. Only whispers. Only stories that seem too uncertain to believe. Meanwhile, the rain continues. It falls across vineyards in France, across rolling hills in England, across the forests of Germany, across the mountain paths leading toward distant kingdoms. The same clouds drift above them all, paying no attention to borders or crowns. Nature remains calm. The rivers continue flowing.
Wildflowers bloom beside forgotten roads. Shepherds guide their flocks across peaceful valleys, as they have done for generations. Looking across the landscape, nothing appears different. And perhaps that is why history often surprises those who live through it. Great changes rarely arrive all at once. They begin with small mysteries. A road that grows quieter, a harbor that grows still, letters that stop arriving, questions without answers. One evening, as rain taps gently against the windows of a small monastery, an elderly monk closes the heavy cover of his journal. He looks toward the darkening sky and quietly says to the young novice beside him,
The world feels different this year. The young monk asks why. The old man simply smiles. I cannot explain it, he replies. But sometimes history changes long before anyone finds the words to describe it. Outside, the church bell rings slowly across the valley. Families extinguish their candles one by one. The rain falls softly upon rooftops, fields, and forests. Europe drifts peacefully into another night, still unaware that one of history's most unforgettable chapters is now only days away. Another week passes. Spring rain continues to wash the stone streets of Europe, leaving every village fresh beneath soft gray skies. Nothing appears rushed. Nothing appears extraordinary. Morning arrives with the familiar sound of church bells. Market stalls open before sunrise. Fresh bread cools upon wooden shelves. Children hurry through narrow streets, carefully stepping around puddles left by the night's gentle rain. The world still feels wonderfully ordinary. Yet in several port towns along the Mediterranean, people begin noticing something difficult to explain. A few sailors seem unusually tired after their long voyages. Some ships remain tied to the docks longer than expected. Captains who would normally hurry back to sea choose to wait another day, or another week. No official warning is given. No royal messenger rides through the gates. Life simply slows, almost too quietly to notice. In Sicily, merchants continue unloading barrels of grain, spices, olive oil, and fine cloth from distant kingdoms. The familiar sounds of trade echo across the harbor. Wood creaks beneath heavy carts. Seagulls circle above the sea. Rain falls gently upon rows of weathered fishing boats. Everything appears exactly as it always has. But conversations begin to change. Instead of discussing prices or harvests, travelers ask one another simple questions. Did your journey take longer than usual? Were the northern roads busy? Have you visited the eastern ports recently? The answers are often uncertain. Some travelers quietly nod. Others simply shrug. No one has seen the whole picture. Each person carries only one small piece of a much larger story. Far inland, monasteries welcome weary pilgrims seeking shelter from another rainy evening. The visitors remove their damp cloaks and warm themselves beside crackling fires. They speak softly, almost in whispers. Their stories are no longer about distant kings or exciting adventures. Instead, they describe empty roads, unexpected delays, and villages that somehow seem quieter than they remember. The monks listen carefully. They write a few brief notes inside their journals. Nothing more. History is still too young to recognize itself. Across France, the rain continues without hurry. It falls upon vineyards, stone castles, rolling hills, ancient forests. The rivers rise gently beneath old bridges, as though the land itself is breathing slowly in its sleep. Nature remains beautifully unchanged. Only people have begun to notice the silence growing between familiar moments. A marketplace closes earlier.
A traveler chooses not to continue his journey until morning. A family waits for relatives who should have arrived days ago. Small moments, almost invisible. Yet history is often built from moments exactly like these.
As darkness settles across Europe once more, thousands of candles glow behind tiny windows. Families share one final quiet meal before sleep. Outside, gentle rain whispers against rooftops that have sheltered generations before them. No one knows that these peaceful evenings are becoming fewer with every passing day. The great turning point has already begun. Not with the sound of armies, not with the command of kings, but with quiet footsteps, soft rain, and questions that no one yet knows how to answer. Tomorrow, Europe will awaken once again beneath gray skies. But tomorrow, the story will no longer be the same. The rain finally stops. For the first time in many days, soft morning sunlight breaks through the clouds, casting a warm golden glow across the rooftops of southern Europe. Tiny drops still cling to the leaves of ancient trees. The stone streets sparkle quietly beneath the morning light. Birds return to the gardens surrounding monasteries, filling the cool air with gentle songs. At first glance, everything appears peaceful. Farmers walk toward their fields. Millers begin turning great wooden wheels beside flowing rivers. Merchants unlock heavy shop doors, while bakers place fresh loaves upon wooden shelves. Life continues. Yet, beneath this ordinary morning, people begin noticing something they have never experienced before. The roads remain strangely empty. A wagon expected from the neighboring town has not arrived. A familiar trader has missed another market day. An old friend who never failed to visit each spring has sent no letter. No one speaks of disaster. Instead, people quietly wonder if the weather has delayed the travelers once again. Perhaps the rivers became too difficult to cross. Perhaps a bridge washed away after weeks of rain. These explanations feel comforting. They are simple, and simple answers are often the easiest to believe. Far away, in a busy Mediterranean harbor, another ship arrives after a long voyage. Its weathered sails hang heavily in the still morning air. The crew moves slowly, speaking little after months at sea. Dock workers greet them with friendly smiles. Cargo is unloaded. Barrels are rolled onto waiting carts. Life at the harbor continues almost exactly as it always has. But one elderly harbor master watches quietly from the end of the stone pier. He has spent nearly 40 years welcoming ships. He knows the sea. He knows the sailors. And today, he senses something different. Not something he can explain, only a silence that feels unfamiliar. Across Europe, church bells continue marking the hours. Their echoes drift across forests, valleys, rivers, and fields, exactly as they have for centuries. People gather for prayer. Candles burn softly beneath painted windows. The comforting rhythm of daily life offers reassurance that tomorrow will surely resemble yesterday. Yet historians would later write that these were the final days of an older world. A world where distant kingdoms still felt safely distant. Where news traveled slowly enough that uncertainty could remain hidden for weeks. Where ordinary people believed that the troubles of one land would never become the troubles of another. As evening approaches, clouds slowly return. A gentle rain begins once more. It falls upon castles in France, quiet villages in Italy, monasteries in Germany, and lonely roads stretching toward the horizon. Every drop seems peaceful. Every sound feels familiar. Yet somewhere beyond those rain-soaked roads, history is quietly unfolding.
not in one place, but across many. The changes are still too small for anyone to fully understand, too scattered, too distant, too ordinary. But soon, the separate pieces will begin to join together, and Europe will finally realize that it is living through a moment unlike any it has ever known. For now, though, the candles still burn warmly. The rain still sings upon the rooftops, and the old world, unaware of what awaits it, gently closes its eyes for another peaceful night.
Several more weeks pass. Spring slowly gives way to early summer, and the rain continues to visit the countryside with gentle patience. Wildflowers bloom beside narrow paths, and the forests become deep green beneath the warm afternoon sun. From a distance, Europe still looks peaceful. The rivers continue their endless journey toward the sea. Windmills turn lazily in the breeze. Church bells greet each sunrise just as they always have. Life appears unchanged. Yet something has quietly shifted. In one village, the weekly market welcomes fewer visitors than usual. In another, a merchant chooses to return home earlier than planned. Farther south, an innkeeper notices that the guest rooms, once filled every evening, now remain empty for days at a time. No single event seems important, but together, they begin to form a pattern. Along the great trade roads, travelers now pause more often to exchange news. They no longer speak only of harvests, kings, or distant festivals. Instead, they ask gentle questions. Have the roads ahead been busy? Is the next town still welcoming visitors? Have you heard anything from the ports? The answers are never quite the same. Some travelers report quiet villages. Others describe busy towns where life continues as normal. A few simply shake their heads and admit they do not know. Uncertainty begins to spread faster than certainty. Inside a monastery overlooking a peaceful valley, an elderly abbot gathers several young monks after evening prayers. He places a large map of Europe upon a wooden table. One by one, travelers describe the places they have visited. A delayed caravan, an unusually silent harbor, a village where the church bell now rings more often than before. The abbot listens without interruption. Finally, he folds the map and says softly, "Perhaps these are only separate stories." He pauses. Or perhaps they are all part of the same journey. Outside, gentle rain begins once again. It taps softly against the monastery windows, while candles flicker inside the quiet hall. The young monks return to copying ancient manuscripts. The familiar scratching of quills across parchment fills the room. For a moment, everything feels wonderfully ordinary again. Across France, farmers continue planting their fields beneath cloudy skies. Children gather fresh water from village wells. Blacksmiths shape glowing iron into horseshoes, while sparks rise briefly before disappearing into the cool air. Life refuses to stop, even as uncertainty quietly grows. As the sun sets, a merchant traveling north reaches the gates of a small town. The guards welcome him politely. Before entering, they ask only one unusual question. "Where have you come from?" The merchant answers. The guards exchange a brief glance. Then the gates slowly open. No explanation is offered. The traveler continues on his way, never realizing that questions like these are becoming more common throughout Europe. Not because people are afraid, but because they are trying to understand. Night falls gently. Rain washes the streets clean once more. Thousands of candles glow behind wooden shutters. Families gather together, thankful for another peaceful evening. Above them,
Gray clouds drift silently across the moon. History is still unfolding, one quiet step at a time. No battles announce its arrival. No king declares its beginning. Only whispers. Only rain. And a growing realization that the familiar world is slowly becoming something entirely new.
By early summer, Europe feels different. Not because the rivers have changed, not because the forests have disappeared. The ancient oak trees still sway gently in the evening breeze, and rain still falls softly upon the stone rooftops of countless villages. Nature continues its quiet rhythm. But the people begin to notice the silence. In places that once echoed with the sound of traders, travelers, and wandering pilgrims, long stretches of quiet now settle over the roads. A bridge that welcomed dozens of wagons each day now sees only a handful. A harbor that once greeted ships every morning sometimes waits until sunset before another sail appears on the horizon. The changes are small, almost invisible, yet impossible to ignore forever. Across France, an elderly innkeeper stands beneath the wooden porch of his roadside inn. Rain falls steadily beyond the doorway. He watches the empty road while polishing the same wooden mug for what feels like the 100th time. Normally, by this hour, travelers would already be filling the common room with stories from distant towns. Tonight, only the rain keeps him company. Inside, the fireplace burns quietly. The smell of warm stew fills the room. Everything is ready, but few guests arrive. Farther north, in England, the village bell rings at sunrise, as always. Farmers gather their tools. Shepherds lead their flocks into green fields still wet from the night's rain. Children wave goodbye before disappearing down narrow paths toward nearby farms. Life continues, yet conversations have changed. People no longer ask only about crops or weather. Instead, they quietly wonder, when did you last hear from your cousins in the south? Have the merchants returned? Is the road to the next town still busy? The answers become shorter with every passing week. No, not yet. We're still waiting. At a monastery deep within the forests of Germany, the library remains peaceful. Rows of handwritten books rest upon heavy wooden shelves. Candles flicker softly while monks continue copying ancient texts, exactly as they have done for generations. One young monk pauses beside an open window. Rain taps gently against the stone walls. The forest beyond seems unchanged. Birds still sing. The river still flows. The world outside looks exactly as it always has. He wonders why so many visitors now arrive carrying worried expressions instead of joyful stories. His teacher gently closes the manuscript before him. History, the old monk says quietly, often speaks in whispers before anyone hears its voice. The young monk nods. He does not yet understand, but years later he will remember those words. As evening settles across Europe, candles begin glowing behind thousands of windows. The rain returns once more, washing away the dust from quiet streets and ancient roads. Somewhere beyond the horizon, another traveler continues his long journey. He carries no treasure, no royal message, no grand announcement, only news. Small pieces of news gathered from one village after another. On their own, they seem unimportant. Together, they tell a story that Europe is only beginning to understand. Tonight, the forests remain peaceful. The rivers continue their endless journey toward the sea. The church bells still mark the passing hours. Yet beneath the gentle sound of falling rain, an old world is quietly slipping away.
Summer settles gently across Europe. The rain becomes lighter now, arriving mostly in the evenings. During the day, warm sunlight stretches across vineyards, rolling hills, and quiet rivers that have carried travelers for countless generations. At first glance, the continent still appears peaceful. Farmers continue tending their fields, millers guide flowing water beneath great wooden wheels, shepherds rest beneath ancient trees while their flocks wander across open meadows. Nature follows the same rhythm it always has. But people have begun to notice something different. In monasteries across France and northern Italy, handwritten journals are slowly filling with unusual observations. Not dramatic stories, only small notes. A village received no visitors this week. A caravan arrived much later than expected. A ferry crossed the river with only 2 passengers. Each note seems ordinary, yet together they begin forming a pattern. Far away, inside the office of a wealthy merchant, a large map lies across an oak table. Colored threads connect distant cities. Normally, those threads represent busy trade routes. Today, several of them are quietly removed, not because the roads have disappeared, but because fewer people are traveling them. The merchant studies the map for a long moment. He cannot explain why the pattern troubles him. Outside, gentle rain begins to fall. The drops strike the windows in a slow, steady rhythm, almost like the ticking of a clock. Time continues moving forward, whether anyone notices or not. Across the English countryside, a village schoolmaster welcomes only half the children he usually teaches. Some remain at home helping their families. Others are visiting relatives in neighboring towns. No one thinks much of it. Life has always been unpredictable. Still, the classroom feels unusually quiet. The empty benches seem to ask questions no one can answer. Farther east, a group of pilgrims pauses beside a stone bridge as evening approaches. The river below reflects the gray sky above. They decide to spend the night at a nearby monastery, rather than continue after sunset. Around the evening fire, they exchange stories from the roads. One speaks of peaceful villages. Another mentions towns that felt strangely silent. A third simply says, "It feels as though everyone is waiting for something." No one replies. The fire crackles softly. Outside, rain continues to fall upon the monastery garden. Inside the library, an elderly monk carefully closes a large leather-bound chronicle. He looks across shelves filled with the history of kings, battles, famines, and harvests. Each generation, he thinks, believes its own ordinary days will last forever. Yet history never stands still. Sometimes it changes in a single afternoon.
It changes one quiet day at a time. Across Europe, the church bells continue to ring. The forests remain green. The rivers continue their endless journey toward the sea. The rain washes every road equally, asking no questions of kings or farmers. And somewhere beyond those rain-soaked roads, the scattered pieces of an invisible story are slowly coming together. The people cannot yet see the whole picture, but history already can. And before long, Europe itself will begin to understand. Late summer arrives with cool mornings and gentle evening rain. Across Europe, fields of wheat sway beneath quiet skies, and vineyards glow softly in the golden light before sunset. The rivers continue their patient journey toward the sea, just as they have for centuries. Nature has not changed, but the roads have. A merchant leaving Florence notices something unusual during his journey north. The road itself is familiar. The old bridges remain standing. The roadside inns still welcome weary travelers. Yet the path feels strangely empty. Hours pass before another wagon appears. When 2 travelers finally meet, they greet one another warmly, but their conversations are different now. Instead of speaking about business or festivals, they ask simple questions. Which road did you take? Did you pass through Genoa? How many people were traveling there? No one asks these questions out of fear. They ask because they are searching for understanding. In the markets of France, merchants began arriving later than usual. Some market squares remain lively. Others feel unusually quiet.
A baker who has sold bread in the same square for 30 years notices that familiar customers have stopped appearing. He assumes they are simply busy with the harvest. It is the easiest explanation, and sometimes the easiest explanation is the one people choose first. Rain begins to fall once more. It washes the dust from stone streets and wooden carts. Children stretch out their hands to catch the cool droplets, laughing as they run through the narrow lanes between cottages. For them, the world remains full of wonder. Far away in a quiet monastery overlooking a broad valley, an elderly monk receives visitors from several different kingdoms. They arrive one after another over many days. Each carries a different story. One speaks of quieter ports. Another describes roads with fewer travelers. A third quietly mentions villages where people seem reluctant to journey beyond their own fields. The monk listens carefully. When the visitors have gone, he walks to the monastery tower. From there, he watches rain drifting slowly across the valley below. He cannot see the distant cities. He cannot see the busy harbors. But somehow, he senses they are all connected. That evening, he opens a fresh page in his journal. He writes only a single sentence. The roads themselves seem to be telling a story. Then he closes the book. Across England, church bells echo gently through the damp evening air. Families gather beside warm fireplaces. Stew simmers slowly over glowing embers. Outside, horses rest quietly beneath wooden shelters, while rain taps softly upon their roofs. Everything still feels peaceful, yet more travelers now choose to remain close to home.
Long journeys become less common. Letters arrive less often. The world seems to be shrinking, not because the land has changed, but because fewer footsteps cross it. As darkness settles across Europe, the rain grows lighter. Clouds drift slowly across the moon. The forests whisper in the evening wind. History continues moving forward without hurry. No king has announced what is happening. No great battle has begun. And still, the continent is changing. One quiet road at a time. One unanswered question at a time. One gentle rainfall at a time. Tomorrow will bring another sunrise, another market, another journey. But Europe is no longer the same Europe that greeted the first merchant ships many months ago. The old world is fading so quietly that only history itself seems to notice.
The first days of autumn arrive quietly. Cool mornings return to Europe, and gentle rain once again becomes a familiar companion. The forests shimmer with shades of gold and amber, while fallen leaves drift slowly along narrow streams. The seasons continue their timeless journey. Nature seems perfectly at peace. Across the countryside, messengers ride along old stone roads carrying leather satchels filled with carefully sealed letters. Some are written by merchants discussing trade. Others carry invitations to weddings, requests for supplies, or simple greetings between families separated by many miles. For generations, these letters have connected distant villages and cities. Most eventually reach their destination. But now, some never do. At first, no one is concerned. A river may have flooded. A bridge may have needed repairs. Heavy rain can easily delay a rider for several days. These things have happened before. Life continues. In a quiet village outside Paris, a woman waits beside her cottage window each afternoon. Her brother, a cloth merchant from the south, usually writes once every month. She knows his handwriting well. She recognizes the color of the wax he uses to seal each letter. This month, nothing arrives. She tells herself that business must be keeping him busy. Tomorrow, perhaps. Or next week. Far to the east, a monastery receives only a handful of visitors during what is normally its busiest season. The guest rooms remain clean. The kitchen prepares more food than is needed. The monks welcome every traveler with the same warm smile, yet each evening more empty chairs remain around the dining table. The silence grows gently, almost politely. An elderly monk begins comparing the monastery's records from previous years. He notices no dramatic change, only small differences. Fewer guests, fewer messages, fewer familiar names written into the visitor's book. He closes the heavy volume without speaking. Outside, rain taps softly against the stained glass windows. Across England, the weekly market still opens at sunrise. Fresh vegetables are arranged upon wooden tables. Farmers arrive with baskets of apples and grain. Children weave happily between the stalls, while musicians play simple melodies near the village well. Everything appears wonderfully ordinary. Yet several traders quietly mention that goods from the south have become harder to find. No one argues. No one panics. People simply adapt, as they always have. History often asks ordinary people to continue living ordinary lives, even while extraordinary events unfold beyond the horizon. As evening settles across Europe, candles begin to glow behind countless small windows. Rain washes the rooftops once more. The rivers continue flowing.
The forests continue breathing with the wind. Only the people have begun to notice that the invisible threads connecting towns, families, and kingdoms seem just a little weaker than before. Not broken, only quieter. Somewhere, another messenger begins his journey beneath gray skies. He carries letters filled with hope, routine, and ordinary news. Whether every letter will arrive, no one can yet say. But history has already begun writing a different message, one that no messenger can deliver quickly enough. Tonight, Europe sleeps beneath gentle rain. The bells still ring. The fires still burn. And tomorrow, another road will quietly add its own small chapter to a story that is only beginning to unfold.
Autumn rain falls gently across Europe, from the hills of northern Italy to the quiet valleys of France, from the forests of Germany to the distant villages of England. The same gray clouds drift slowly overhead. The rain knows no borders, neither do the questions. In a small monastery overlooking a winding river, an elderly abbot welcomes 3 travelers who have never met before. One has journeyed from Genoa, another has come from southern France, the third arrives after many weeks on the roads of the Holy Roman Empire. As evening settles in, they gather beside a warm fire while rain taps softly against the stone walls. They begin to share stories. At first, the stories seem unrelated. A quieter harbor, a delayed caravan, an unusually empty marketplace, a familiar inn that welcomed far fewer guests than anyone expected. Each traveler believes these are only local concerns. Then the second traveler pauses. We saw the same thing. The third nods slowly. So did we. For a long moment, no one speaks. The only sound is the steady rain outside and the gentle crackling of the fire. The realization arrives quietly. The changes are not confined to one village or one kingdom. They are appearing across many roads at the same time. Across France, a royal messenger rides through gentle rain, carrying sealed letters between castles. At every stop, he hears similar conversations. The merchants have not arrived. We're still waiting for relatives. The roads have become strangely quiet. No one can explain why, yet everyone seems to be asking the same questions. In England, the harvest is nearly complete. Golden fields stretch toward the horizon beneath low gray clouds. Families work together, gathering the final bundles before winter returns. Life continues. Children still laugh. Dogs chase one another across muddy paths. Smoke still rises from warm chimneys each evening. Looking across the countryside, it is difficult to imagine that history is changing at all. Yet beneath these ordinary days, something invisible continues to spread. Not panic, not chaos, only uncertainty. And uncertainty has a curious way of traveling farther than certainty ever can. Deep within the forests of Germany, a young monk carefully copies another page into the monastery's great chronicle. His teacher watches quietly before placing a gentle hand upon the old wooden desk. "Do you know why we write these pages?" he asks. The young monk shakes his head. "So that those who come after us will remember not only what happened," the old man smiles softly, "but also how quietly it began." Outside, the rain grows heavier for only a moment before becoming soft once again. Water flows from the monastery roof into an ancient stone basin that has collected rain for centuries.
Generations have watched these same drops fall. Kings have come and gone. Empires have risen and faded, yet the rain remains wonderfully unchanged. As night settles across Europe, candles glow behind countless windows. Travelers find shelter. Families gather around evening meals. The forests whisper beneath the cool autumn wind. And across an entire continent, people who have never met one another quietly ask the very same question: what is happening to our world? For now,
No one has the answer. Only history does. And history is still unfolding one peaceful day at a time. Autumn deepens across Europe. The evenings arrive a little earlier now, and cool rain settles gently upon fields where the last of the harvest has already been gathered. The forests glow with shades of amber and deep crimson. Leaves drift silently onto forgotten paths, covering old footprints as though they had never been there. Another season is quietly passing. In a village near the Loire River, the weekly market opens beneath a sky filled with soft gray clouds. Farmers arrange baskets of apples, potters display freshly fired bowls. A shepherd offers warm wool blankets before winter arrives. The market is calm, orderly, peaceful. Yet one thing feels different. The conversations are shorter. People smile politely, but many seem to be listening for news that never arrives. Across northern Italy, an elderly merchant unlocks the doors of his warehouse just after sunrise. He walks slowly between rows of wooden barrels and neatly stacked bundles of cloth. Only a year ago, this place echoed with the voices of workers loading wagons for distant cities. Today, there is more silence than sound. He does not complain. He simply waits. Perhaps tomorrow another caravan will arrive. Perhaps next week the roads will become busy again. Hope, after all, is often built from ordinary expectations. Far away, a monastery bell rings across a rain-soaked valley. Its sound travels through the mist, reaching small farms scattered among the hills. The monks continue their daily routine exactly as they always have. Morning prayers, work in the gardens, copying ancient manuscripts, welcoming travelers. Life inside the stone walls remains beautifully familiar, but the guest book tells a quieter story. Each passing week brings fewer names. The pages that once filled quickly now remain half empty. The librarian gently closes the book without a word. Outside, rain gathers upon the old stone steps before flowing quietly into the garden below. In England, fishermen pull their boats onto the shore before another evening shower begins. The sea is calm. Seabirds circle overhead. The harbor master counts the vessels anchored beneath the fading light. He pauses for a moment. There are fewer than he remembers. Not dramatically fewer, only enough to notice. He folds his hands behind his back and watches the rain spread across the water like countless tiny circles. Sometimes history announces itself with trumpets. Sometimes it arrives so gently that people mistake it for an ordinary season. Across Europe, people continue planning for winter. Wood is stacked beside cottages, grain is stored safely in barns, candles are carefully made for the long nights ahead. Parents tell children stories beside warm fires while rain whispers softly against the windows. Life continues.
And perhaps that is the most remarkable part of all. Even as uncertainty quietly settles over the continent, people continue loving, working, praying, laughing, and hoping that tomorrow will feel just a little more familiar than today. As darkness spreads across Europe once again, the roads grow still. Lanterns glow beside quiet inns. The forests breathe beneath gentle rain. And somewhere, beyond every village and every kingdom, history continues its patient journey. Not rushing, not stopping, simply moving forward, one peaceful evening at a time.